Should Brian Kohberger, the 28-year-old former PhD student studying criminology, face the death penalty if convicted? He is accused of the quadruple homicide of 4 college students in Moscow, Idaho, a case that has left an entire nation stunned and asking the resounding question, why? Did his academic pursuits fuel a darker fascination? This is Crime Bites. I'm your host, Carrie Drobin, a multi-published award-winning true crime author and host of the true crime podcast Crime Stands Still. Welcome. On November 13th, 2022, the quiet farming community of Moscow, Idaho, population 25,000, was shattered by a crime so horrific it defies comprehension. 4 University of Idaho students, Ethan, Zaina, Madison, and Kaylee, were found brutally murdered in their off-campus home. Kohberger was arrested in Pennsylvania weeks later, stands accused of this heinous crime. He left behind DNA evidence on a knife sheath discovered beneath one of the victims, tying him directly to the crime scene. One particularly chilling theory connects Kohberger to the infamous serial killer Dennis Rader, also known as BTK, Bind, Torture, Kill. Kohberger reportedly studied under Dr. Catherine Ramsland, a criminologist and forensic psychologist who has written extensively about BTK. Could Kohberger have developed an unhealthy fascination with Rader? Did he communicate with him directly in prison? These questions linger as investigators sift through Kohberger's digital and personal life. So why these victims? What remains baffling is why he targeted them. Ethan, Madison, Kaylee, Zaina. He seems to have no direct connection to them. Kohberger, however, was seen cruising the neighborhood around their home at least 12 times before the murders. Was he stalking them? Watching their routines? Building the kind of familiarity that so often plays a role in crimes like these, in crimes like BTK's? Psychologist support suggests that Kohberger might fit the profile of someone obsessed with control and dominance. His alleged actions, choosing victims who lived together, striking late at night, and evading capture for weeks, suggests a level of calculated planning. Arrogance, actually. One of the most haunting details of this case comes from a surviving roommate who lived on the same floor as some of the victims. Reports indicate that she opened her bedroom door 3 times during that horrible night, disturbed by noises. On the 3rd occasion, she saw a tall figure dressed in dark clothing with bushy eyebrows, walking right past her. He didn't harm her, didn't speak to her, he simply left. But here's the most chilling detail. That roommate didn't call 911 until noon the next day, 8 hours later. Why? Psychologists call this frozen shock, a paralyzing response to extreme fear and trauma. I mean, how close to death was she in that moment? It's a question that will likely haunt her every single day. The town of Moscow transformed from peace to fear. It was a tight-knit farming community, the kind of place where people rarely lock their doors. How often have we heard that cliche? A picturesque college town now forever marred by a sense of fear and disbelief. For many residents, Kohberger is literally the boogeyman, a figure who turned their quiet town into a scene of unimaginable horror. So why? Why did Kohberger do this? Was it a fascination with power and admiration for other killers like BTK, a twisted desire to prove that he could actually outsmart the system? Did he want people to study him? Did he think he could get away with it? We may never know the answer to that. It may lie in the trial to come or nowhere at all. What we do know is that DNA evidence, the eyewitness account, and Kohberger's suspicious behavior point to a calculated, methodical crime. What about the role of online sleuths, right? It's no secret that true crime has become a global obsession. In the aftermath of the Idaho murders, the internet literally lit up with speculation, theories, accusations. True crime sleuths took to social media, accusing everyone from the victim's neighbor to a food truck vendor, even the boyfriends of some of the victims. Anybody who had bushy eyebrows became a suspect, despite that law enforcement cleared them and pronounced their innocence early on in the investigation. Many of these amateur detectives refused to accept it. And these online witch hunts show the double-edged sword of public involvement in high-profile cases. While some sleuths can actually uncover crucial leads, they can also cause unnecessary harm by targeting innocent people. But to be fair, There have been cases where internet sleuths actually solved murders. I mean, think of Don't Fuck with Cats, that documentary, where online detectives actually helped track down that killer. Or what about the Golden State Killer, right, where amateur genealogists worked alongside law enforcement to crack that case and identify Joseph James D'Angelo. But in Kohberger's case, it wasn't the sleuths who cracked it. It was law enforcement, good old-fashioned investigation and cutting-edge technology. And what was the break in the case? Surveillance videos. Surveillance videos showed time and again a white Hyundai Elantra circling the area around where the victims lived. That same car was pulled over multiple times during the night of the murder, or spotted multiple times during the night of the murder. But that same car, after investigators ran that plate, they learned that it was Kohberger, a student, and that he had been pulled over in the month before the murders. And when he had been interrogated or questioned by that officer, he provided his cell phone number. And here's the thing about cell phones. They are gold in murder investigations. They are the proverbial smoking gun. You get a cell phone, you get all kinds of data and information, not only about the person, the subscriber, but where that person has been. And sometimes in a murder investigation, it's not about what's present, but it's about what's missing. Kohberger's phone had been shut off at 4:48 a.m., the exact window when the murders were believed to have occurred. And forensic experts often say that turning off a phone can be as critical as leaving it on or providing a digital trail. But what's even more damning is the data from before and after the murders that show that Kohberger's phone pinged in the area of the victim's home on 12 separate occasions. So why would someone with no apparent connection to these victims or this murder be near the home so often? Cell phones and surveillance cameras, they're now some of the most powerful tools in solving crimes. They don't just track where someone is, they also track where someone isn't, as in Kohberger's case. So technology can be really critical in solving a case. Now, Kohberger faces the death penalty in Idaho. And Idaho is still one of 28 states that allows the death penalty and one of only 5 states that allows an alternative, the firing squad. The other 5 states are Massachusetts, Oklahoma, Utah, and South Carolina. So firing squad is permitted, right? Utah was the last state that used firing squad, but it's only authorized when lethal injection drugs are unavailable. So Idaho recently amended its statute just a few years ago to reintroduce this method after ongoing issues with lethal injection protocols occurred. So here's a stark fact. Firing squad executions have not been used in Idaho since 1960. Nationwide, they're rare. And in fact, only 4 firing squad executions have occurred in the United States since 1970, and all of them in Utah. The most recent 2010 execution of Ronnie Lee Gardner exposed the brutal realities of this method and whether it violated the 8th Amendment's prohibition against cruel and unusual punishment. Well, there's a shocker, right? Witnesses reported that Gardner did not die instantly after being struck by multiple bullets. In fact, he moved for several moments later, indicating to people that suspected he probably was conscious during the firing and he was in extreme pain. But lethal injection, the default prosecution method or execution method in Idaho, has its own set of problems, right? This so-called lethal cocktail typically includes a sedative, a paralytic agent, and a drug to stop the heart. But sourcing these drugs has become a problem because lots of pharmacies don't want to provide these drugs to executioners. So this has led to delays, to botched procedures, and an ongoing debate about whether lethal injection is as humane as it was once portrayed. So take, for instance, the botched execution of serial killer Richard Albert Creech. In his case, executioners struggle to find a vein. So this is a problem that kind of underscores the limitations of this procedure because Creech's ordeal could be very similar to many more executions down the pike. I mean, how many more convicted people on death row are going to have issues